our biggest stake in the ground or flag in the ground is that we allow advisors to do what they do best, to meet with their clients, to grow their business without having to do a lot of the operational compliance and other pieces of the business that takes away time from them serving their clients. Now, obviously they get input and we want to collaborate with them. That's one of the most fun parts of my job is meeting with advisors and learning about what they're doing and learning how we can help them. So that's what we do too. We meet and ask, where are the gaps? What are we missing? What are you looking to do and how can we support that?
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast, the Know Me podcast where we explore the art and science of discovery to build meaningful connections in financial planning. Jake Saba is the Vice President in Growth and Succession at Focus Financial Network. With a rich background spanning roles at UBS, Columbia, Ameriprise, and as a managing partner at Apex Capital Distributors, Jake brings a wealth of experience in financial services and consulting. Beyond his professional endeavors, he serves as a firefighter and a first responder at the Excelsior Fire District, showcasing his dedication to community service. Jake, I'm so thrilled and grateful that you took some time to spend some time with us. Welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thanks for having me, Marla. Great to be here.
So you have had an absolutely incredible career so far. I'm curious, and we always start with the question, what is exciting to you about the moment that we're in right now?
Yeah, I'll pick like two because there's so many, right? The financial industry and one of the reasons I got into it is that it's evergreen and always changing, right? And you can always learn from it. But I know we'll delve into this a little bit, but the artificial intelligence is obviously exciting and maybe scary for most clients and most advisors. But I think there's such a great opportunity for us as an industry and advisors to utilize some of this technology to become more efficient, more scalable. And we'll talk about that too, but just serve their clients better. And I know you're in that world too. So there are so many opportunities with artificial intelligence and just technology, but also one of the topics we'll get into too, it's just so timely and relevant, is the succession or the transition of clients and wealth to the next generation. And that's not just in the financial industry, but it's very prevalent that a lot of these founders have been around since probably the 80s, some even the 70s, and they have been looking over the past few years and the next 10 years to pass on not only their clients and their business, but their knowledge. And we'll get into that some more too. So there's a lot of movement, as there always is, but I'm more excited about the industry now than I've ever been.
I love that you're kind of recognizing, and we've been talking about it for so long, this wealth transition, but it is in the process. It is happening. And it's happening as not only the clients are shifting and evolving, but so are the providers. And that's going to be so critical to our conversation. Let's start with just a little bit of your background and where you came from. So you've witnessed this transformation from product distribution to more client centricity. So can you share a bit of your perspective on that evolution? You talked a little bit about what you're excited about and how tech is going to help support that client centricity. But how do you see that transition impacting wealth management in the future?
Yeah, we've seen it quite a bit already since I've started in the late 90s. And the biggest realization or benefit has been both transparency and fee compression. When I first started, the internet barely existed, right? And so a lot of the information was owned by the large firms, the research, the information on companies and stocks. But now there's too much information out there for clients and advisors. So the difficulty is how to filter that information or how to block out the noise. So technology can help do that. Transparency also brings lower fees. So that's happened, whether it be in just the advisory fees that advisors charge, or especially in the management fees of mutual funds and the transition to ETFs. So that's been one of the biggest changes in our industry that I've realized over the last 10, 15 years. And most of it was predicted, but seeing the migration of assets from maybe more expensive, actively managed mutual funds, which there's still some great ones out there, but to lower cost, either passive or strategic ETFs. So that transparency and that fee compression has been very big. But also the transition to either solo advisors or an advisor and a staff member to large teams with specialties or more, being able to address more complex issues for clients as they've grown and their businesses have grown and their needs have increased.
Yeah, so that's such a good transition. So you're talking about how the industry is evolving, but you're also talking about how the wealth management kind of distribution channels, the advisors themselves are evolving. And so as that happens, a lot of advisors really struggle to, number one, find their niche, but two, define their value proposition. How is it that they are differentiating their practice as they're looking at changing themselves, their teams, their structure potentially, and creating more advocates and referrals among their clients? What strategies do you recommend? How do you help advisors articulate their value and foster truly strong, lasting relationships with their clients?
I love that you use the word advocate because I use that as well. And I think I originally got this. I'm going to steal a little bit or give credit to Duncan McPherson. He's somebody I've read for a long time and is pretty well known in the financial advisory industry. But that is the primary goal of an advisor, to create advocates. And you have to do that by creating the service or demonstrating the service and your value to them. But it is really important that advisors learn how to articulate their value proposition so that a client understands and can repeat it. I think that a lot of advisors know what they do, but it's hard to convey and articulate what they do into a sentence or two. So that's first and foremost, especially if for those advisors that are transitioning, they need to find that fit, right? Transitioning and looking for their succession plan. So if advisors are not able to articulate the value they provide to clients, one, it's harder to get referrals. And two, it's harder to find that positioning and cultural fit when you're looking to pass on your legacy. So a lot of advisors have done a good job with that. Either they discuss how they're in the business of helping clients prepare for and live in retirement so they don't outlive their income. Something as simple as that. Or somebody may be a little bit more niche and they'll say, I help medical executives with their equity comp plans and the other benefits and complexities that go along with owning company stock and high income positions. And, I could give you a bunch of examples, but it's probably past the time where good advisors do everything for everyone. And because it's impossible to scale if you're everything to everyone, you have to find your niche. You also, though, can broaden your scope or serve more people as you build a larger team. And so the ability to delegate and compartmentalize some of the things that you do for clients, and we'll get into that too, but I think it's so key for advisors to have a knowledge transfer plan, right? Because if you're a founding member of a team and you've brought on generation 2 and now many times generation 3, I just had a discussion with the advisor the other day. They realized that he was doing everything. And when he asked a younger advisor to do something, they're like, you always do that. I don't even know how to do that. So he's like, well, now I got to start teaching different aspects of planning, and some of the complex trust stuff is what they were dealing with. So not only being able to articulate value to those that you serve, but also as you build and scale and then pass the business on, you need to transfer that knowledge. And we can get into that deeper, but that's probably a little bit more psychological than process oriented.
Yeah, I definitely want to go deeper on that. And I think a lot of the tips you're sharing, just kind of being 2 years into my journey as an entrepreneur and building a business, just seem kind of core to a business. You have to have a clear brand and it needs to be understandable. What is the value you introduce? How are you differentiated? Can someone else repeat it really easily? Do you have people on your team that understand their work and are doing their work independently and collaboratively to achieve your end goals? They're all kind of just very core of when you are an advisor, you're building a business, and that business should be able to live even when you are thinking through and considering succession. So with a significant significant percentage of advisors that are approaching retirement, succession planning has become so important. And I know this is a lot of your focus at Focus Financial, assisting advisors working through effective succession strategies and these key elements that both the buyers and the sellers in these transactions have to think about as they're preparing for the future of their business, for themselves, for their clients, and for the buyers, the value of that book that the buyers are buying and hopefully retaining and growing. So how do you think about that and kind of supporting healthy succession planning?
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack here. And you're right. They are building a business, and you hit on some of the key areas that they need to focus on. But what I've realized in working with advisors, for many years before I was at Focus, I was in wholesaling and I did some deal structuring and some financing. So usually when an advisor thinks about succession, some of the first things they go to are the financing aspect. Can someone afford to pay me? How are they going to get the capital to finance this deal? And what's the deal structure look like, right? When are they paying? How often? What are some of the clawback scenarios? And to me, a lot of the document and financial aspects, that's the easiest part of this. The tough part is basically for the advisor about to leave or considering succession or considering leaving, they really should have a good understanding or feeling of what the next period in life looks like for them, because they need to be comfortable with even going through this decision. So a lot of it is just asking them something as simple as, what's retirement look like for you? What is really the end for you? Because some of this is a process and a transition. And a lot of times what we've realized is that an advisor might say that they want a 3-year transition or a 5-year transition, but a year into it, they realize, I'm gone half the time anyways. I'm really enjoying my grandkids or golfing or whatever their hobbies are. And if they did a good job of, you said it, replacing themselves, that is so key. We can dive into that a little bit more. But a lot of times they'll realize they didn't need as long of a transition as they thought they would, because when they're thinking of it, it's a little daunting. When they get into it and start doing it, they're like, I guess I did build this, or I picked a good successor because they can run this without. So going back a little bit to what you mentioned in replacing yourself, I think that is somewhat hard psychologically for advisors to grasp that they're being replaced, but it really is one of the most important factors in preparing yourself to sell or create a succession is replacing yourself. Because if you sell to someone and they don't do what you did, or you don't have in place the efficiencies to allow them to increase their capacity because they just took on 150 more clients, it's going to be a really difficult transition, and they maybe aren't going to be able to serve the clients as appropriately as possible. So that is another aspect that I think is very important, is aligning the client service experience with the new business, at least somewhat similar to what they had in the previous experience. The client experience is so important, whether it be technology, the amount of meetings, what they get out of their planning, how the advisor meets with them and addresses their needs, that client service experience, being service, the matrix, however you want to define it, is really a key element in succession and going through that transition process.
Yeah, what a great answer. And I feel that one of the most beautiful parts of your answer is the role reversal. It is they spent their entire careers helping other people define retirement. And then, all of a sudden they got to do it themselves. They've got to think about, wait a second, I've been helping people answer this one question for some of them decades and decades, generations even. And now they've got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what, I haven't really done this for me. So that was really a great perspective on succession from the perspective of maybe the seller, or in a transaction, or somebody who's handing over their business, or looking at, how do I extract myself? And when you look at it from the perspective of a buyer, how can a team that is looking to bring on a new book of business think about things like valuation, deal structure, and preparing that business for success?
So on the opposite side of the coin, right? Are they the right person or advisor to manage a staff, or do they need to bring someone on to help fulfill that or fill that role? Because some advisors are so good with people. And this gets back to having a hard time retiring. They're such a trusted advisor that they feel like they're maybe letting people down by not being their advisor anymore. But when you're preparing your practice as a buyer, your roles may change, or people's roles within your staff may change as you scale. right? And I mentioned that earlier, finding the right people in the right roles in order to scale, and are people in the right position. Do you have the ability as a buyer to bring on 150, 200 more clients, to have that many more meetings per year? Is your technology in place? So I would say the most important things obviously are the people, and people in the right roles to expand, and the technology, and just your processes you have in place. So when you onboard a new client, or when you conduct your follow-up after a meeting, do you have all those things down? And it comes back to that repeatable process you're talking about for almost any business. If someone's already struggling with their current business, it's going to be really difficult to all of a sudden add to another practice of, like I said, 150 more clients. Sometimes they might have the ability to bring on that staff. Hopefully it's a good cultural fit, or they're in the same local geography or vicinity. And nowadays with virtual aspect of a lot of work, that might not matter as much, but the people, the process, and just the capacity is so important. And I could get into that, but a lot of it is technologically based, and obviously human capital. So the development of your staff becomes even more important as you grow.
Yeah, I love it. And I think what's beautiful is you're speaking from the perspective of a company that's done it and has really ambitious goals for the future. So Focus Financial, you shared in our prior chat, you're aiming to 10x in the next 5 to 7 years, and you've grown a tremendous amount in the last couple of years. So from the perspective of, hey, I'm in it. I get it. I understand exactly what you're trying to do as a advisory, call it. I struggle sometimes when people chat with me. They're like, so are you looking at aggregators? I don't know if they like to be called aggregators. Like, it sounds very technical and scientific. I don't know. A growing company, let's say, to be on the safe side. What are the strategies for those growing companies to be implemented as they're looking to achieve scale, and to do it in a really, really healthy way, attracting exactly the types of businesses that you've been talking about in the first part of this podcast? You're talking about, here's what a healthy business looks like, and here's what it has to have in order to scale. Would love to understand, no, here's what it actually looked like for us in Focus, and what we were able to do to really make the most of it.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm going to start with people again, because, Focus is fortunate in that we have right now currently over 100 advisors, right? So we have a base of both of knowledge and of human and intellectual capital and experience, so that we have the ability for others to move over and retire, and have a choice of many experienced, great people and teams to be their successor. So Focus wants to be the place where advisors want to retire or feel good handing off their legacy. And we've done that over 60 times in the last 30 some years. I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere between 60 and 70 where we've had advisors retire, and we've had our advisors and teams take that on. So a lot of it comes from, and that's just since 2004. So really there wasn't a lot of it prior to that, because the advisors were younger. Not only do we have the people, but we do have the process in place. So we do have a corporate team that has the experience in serving advisors in all capacities. We have a compliance team, we have a marketing team, we have an operational team, we have an IT services team. So, when you think of the tech stack, so we also have a tech stack, meaning that what are the primary things an advisor needs just to conduct business, right? Billing and reporting software, customer relationship management software, document storage and retention. Those are like the key must-haves for a financial advisor. But then there's things just like email and cybersecurity and file transfer services. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but I've learned at Focus just the immense amount of work that goes on behind the scenes from an IT staff, which is just more servicing and protecting the advisors and their clients. So we built the infrastructure to serve over 100 advisors and over 114 staff for them and our corporate staff. So we have 230 or so people to service our 8.7 billion assets in management. But because we have the infrastructure, because we have the established tech stack and all the support around that, we have the ability to scale, right? And now we will likely need to add people as we grow. But between all of that infrastructure and the experienced people, and I forgot to mention the legal documentation, right? So someone doesn't have to go out and hire an attorney to at least get the template for a buy-sell or a continuity agreement or some of those other documents they might want to review. So we have that on hand, and obviously they can consult with their attorney, so they're not just taking it from us. And what I've learned too is that you might think from the outside or an advisor that's never done it before that successions or acquisitions are very similar every time. They're never the same, right? So that's one thing you have to come to grips with too, is that just because you've done one succession or transition or acquisition in any business, just because you buy the same business again from someone else, it's not the same experience. It's not the exact same documentation, and it's not the same expectations or transition. So I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but communication is so key from both sides in any transaction, but especially in handing off clients, to trust one person to handing off those clients to trust someone else.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. Oh my gosh, there was so much richness in that answer, just to help so many people that are thinking about this. And from the perspective of, wow, so much experience. You've gone through 60 handovers. Like, Focus is truly multi-generational and has gone through this so many times that you understand and have seen it. You've got the experience to recognize doing it again and again and again, what's needed, what works. And you're speaking my language, coming from over 20 years deep in ops. Ops matters. Like the operations and the technology, and making sure you have process is really what can drive, was this a good transaction that drove value or not? And I love that you kind of talked about so many things in that answer. Coming back to technology for just a moment, platforms like Nomi, like what we're building, we're aiming to enhance customer understanding and discovery and really help with that handover and modernizing the way that the knowledge transfer happens. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you are bringing new ideas and new technologies to these 100 advisors that you serve? You referenced the 3 Ideas in 3 Minutes series that you created. And I thought, wow, that's such a great idea and digestible. Like, the biggest problem in getting somebody to digest information is making it consumable and gathering their attention such that they're not going to have to read 20 pages to understand what you're trying to say. And it feels like you've really created an awesome mousetrap for that.
Sure. I'll start with the 3 ideas, and then I'll get into the sourcing or reviewing some of the other technologies that help our advisors scale and be more efficient and serve their clients better, right? That's really what a firm like ours is in the business for. It's allowing the advisors more time to better serve their clients, either to do more for them or to go out and get more clients. So the 3 Ideas in 3 Minutes came about when the president of our firm and I were at a conference, and we just got done with an hour-long session that we thought was really informative and really good. And we're like, man, it would be cool if we just whipped out our phones and recorded a 3-minute video that summarized what we just learned so all of our advisors could see it. And we ran with it. When we got back after the conference, I was like, that was a good idea. Let's do that for more things, not just one conference. And I have a wholesaling background, so I was used to trying to convey either complex financial strategies in a quick soundbite or trying to get a longer meeting by having a good quick pitch. Right. So the 3 ideas came from the combination of we should record this at a conference to my experience of going into a wirehouse office as a new wholesaler and an advisor being at their desk and looking up and being like, what do you got? And I'd have to go bang, bang, bang. And if I said something good, then I got to sit down and keep the conversation going. So 3 ideas in 3 minutes came from that. But I was like, how do we produce value for the advisor so it's like a meeting without a meeting, and they want to go to the next step while also helping our strategic partners, not just asset managers. We've done it for everything now, from technology vendors to insurance consultants to you name it. Anybody that can help our advisors in our business, we now do 3 ideas in 3 minutes for. But it started with asset managers. So we started with a 1 minute on economic or macroeconomic update or market segment information. What's the lay of the land? 2, a product positioning. Everyone's selling something, but it's hopefully beneficial for the client. And 3, practice management or value add, something that's not product oriented that helps them run their business. And then we send out an email every week and we post it so it's on demand and viewable. And it's helped both our strategic partners and our advisors save time and gain information in a digestible format.
Like you became a tech company. That's so what you're doing is surfacing content that's digestible and at their own convenience when they can look at it. I love that you called it meeting without a meeting.
Yeah, that's how I view all technology. And I've seen in our industry that hopefully you're using something that leverages your time or ability, right? And that planning software now does that. I remember when we used to have to fill out sheets and mail them or fax them, and then they'd send back a big binder. Nothing was electronic. I'm not that old, but it's amazing that the advancements in technology, because the internet, while it existed, it was barely commercialized in 1998, 1999 when I got into the business. And now it's everything runs online, or that's what we do too, is we continually source and review technologies that might support our advisors in our business. And I can get into some of them. Actually, I'll just jump forward to one of them. The AI agents that listen to meetings like this meeting right now, or I think you can do it on your phone. You just set it on your desk in a meeting and it records. So I'm trying not to name names, like give commercials for other companies, right? There's several out there, but these assistants now will listen to your meetings, whether it be in person or online, summarize the meetings for you. Eventually it'll learn, right? It goes into your CRM. So it'll be like, okay, you forgot to talk about this. I see this client has this, this, and this. You reviewed this, but you didn't talk about this. But also it'll be like, this is your follow-up. The advisor said this, the client said this. Here are the three primary things that you should follow up with. So these virtual or AI driven assistants can save hours a week, probably 10, 15 hours a week of just note taking and summarizing. And then it just helps you better implement or better service the next steps of advising the client. So we're constantly at conferences, getting emails outbound to us anyway, speaking to people like you that have new technologies that might integrate into advisors' businesses. And obviously we get requests from businesses or advisors as well that we have to review, but we always have to consider, thank you for bringing us this, but is this good for the larger percentage of the business, not just one small advisory team?
Yeah, I love that. And technology's come so far for so quickly. I would love to kind of jump into just why might advisors reach out to Focus. Focus is this great place for advisors to retire. You've kind of talked a lot about how it is a kind of good cushion and landing place. Do you want to talk at all any more about kind of why Focus?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I did mention our people. Our corporate staff is very experienced, from operations and compliance and marketing and myself, and there are others. But I think that if you were to ask some of our advisors, they could name a couple of people. They're like, well, when I think of how Focus supports me, it's so-and-so or it's so-and-so. But a lot of, and I think this is a good thing, a lot of what Focus does, the advisors barely even notice, right? It's because they don't have to do it except when they need a new computer or they need to reset a password or their email is not working, or we have a VPN, or when they're at a coffee shop or somewhere that's not in their office or not their home, and they're like, oh, that's right, my client's data is protected, or their firewall goes down in the office and internet goes out imagine internet going out for 5 minutes at a advisory office where there's 30, 40 advisors, right? Nothing can get done. So I think a lot of it is almost unnoticed until there's a problem or issue, which is a good thing. It's maybe hard for our staff to tout it that way, but that's how I think of it. Our biggest stake in the ground or flag in the ground is that we allow advisors to do what they do best, to meet with their clients, to grow their business without having to do a lot of the operational compliance and other pieces of the business that takes away time from them serving their clients. Now, obviously they get input and we want to collaborate with them. That's one of the most fun parts of my job, is meeting with advisors and learning about what they're doing and learning how we can help them. So that's what we do too. We meet and ask, where are the gaps? What are we missing? What are you looking to do? And how can we support that? I was just in a meeting yesterday. The advisor, I asked him, what are you using in all areas of technology? And this wasn't the behind the scenes stuff that we support. It was the planning stuff. There's 16 different pieces of technology he was using. They're his whole team. They have a pretty large team. I'm like, yeah, now that we have 70 some teams, you have 16 pieces of technology. It's not all the same across the board. Like, we haven't got to this point, but one of the things we need to do to scale is probably narrow that down. We need to leverage our partners, not always get more, but better partner with those that we have. And that kind of comes back full circle to that 3 ideas in 3 minutes. We want to support the strategic partners that want to support us. We want to give them time to help our advisors. And really, we need to narrow in on who can help us grow the most.
I love that. We've only had some kind of brief interaction, but you expressed an early interest in what we're building at Nomi, and it's very much part of that knowledge transfer and helping clients through transitions and making that succession planning process and operationally a little bit more sound at the highest level, because, we haven't really gone deep in yet. But why the early interest?
You probably heard some of the theme in what I was talking about. There's such a psychological element to advisors and practices as well. And our business is so metric centered. It talks about returns, even deal structure, financing. Like there's so many numbers. And I think a lot of the people in an industry, they're so used to markets and numbers and data and metrics. They don't realize that most of their clients and most of the people outside of the financial industry, it's a foreign language to others what advisors do on a day in and day out basis. So I do think that there is a higher need for meeting the clients where they're at, not speaking to them from, big mahogany desk with, I'm kind of envisioning the old financial industry. I think they've gotten a lot better, but just understanding clients' needs that aren't just financial, right? A lot of the things that drive them or that either keep them up at night or that motivate them have nothing to do with money, but there's the money they're saving helps them do that, either address that fear or meet that goal, and whether it be giving or creating some type of legacy or funding something. But it's sometimes hard to ask all the appropriate questions. So I think from what I know about Nomi, it helps really get to the root of why these clients are continuing to work with this advisor outside of just saving money for retirement.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe even valuable to some of those advisors to help them define retirement that are kind of going through the process themselves. So our last question on the podcast is always, what is one instance in your life or a conversation that you've had that changed your personal relationship with money?
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier. The one thing that I love about the financial industry is that it's ever changing. There's always something to learn. But, I didn't know that at first. So going back to maybe the emphasis or catalyst, when I was growing up, we didn't have much, right? So I remember getting a paper route at 10 so that I could get better cleats than my parents were going to buy me for baseball, right? So my motivation was, and that was good parenting. They're like, we're not going to spend X on cleats when you can get the same performance for these, right? But they're like, if you want more, you can help pay for them. Well, it's not that they were holding back money or revenue. It's just that was in my mind. Okay, I got a paper out at 10. Now I'm learning to earn and save, but I didn't want to just keep spending it on cleats, right? So then I was good at math. As I got older, I was like, well, things in the financial market just started to interest me. But the relationship part of it to me was way more fulfilling than like I thought I wanted to be a portfolio manager when I was in college. So I think just the understanding, the confidence and the knowledge in knowing what to do with your money and just sharing that knowledge with other people, it just kind of all came together in what I'm doing now and all the experiences I've had for now 25, 26 years in this industry.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's always shocking how many people really harken back to something from their childhood, how our relationship with money starts much earlier than we like to admit. And I'm so glad you shared that. Jake, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with Nomi and the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. Your dedication to advancing wealth management practices and supporting advisors and clients and transitions is super inspiring. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing the continued impact of your work at Focus Financial. Is there anything you want to say about where our listeners can find you? What is your website? How can they get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Thank you. Focusfinancial.com. Just as it sounds, my email is jsaba@focusfinancial.com. I have a LinkedIn page. I think you have access to that. So we're active on LinkedIn. You can find us on our website. On that website is our phone number too. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Amazing. And for the listeners that are listening, what is one way you can take action to help your clients' investments align with their own purpose? And how are you supporting the future of your business. Whatever you want to do with that business, make sure you have learned from this podcast. Drop in the comments or DM me with some tips that you learned from Jake today. Jake, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.